for today. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank first and foremost our organisers in EURISPES. Thank you very much for bringing us here to this beautiful island of Sardinia, which I'm hoping to see a little bit more of than I can currently see of Sardinia. Reminds me a lot more of where I'm from today. And also, of course, a big thank you to our colleagues from IWAK who have hosted and kind of looked after this network now for 17 years. And thank you very much for them doing that. Without their input, we would be far less. We've got a really packed and busy program today. We have a mix of in-person speakers. We have one or two live speakers who will be joining us from Zoom. And we also have one or two recordings. So if we can get on with our agenda, our first speakers, I'm really delighted to be able to introduce. Firstly, it will be Dr. Girolamo Bollata, who is the director of EURISPES Sardinia. And he will be followed by Angelo Caliende, who is here representing Professor Gian Maria Fara. And we are also very pleased to have the mayor, who we met also yesterday. We have the mayor, who is Giovanni Antonio Addis, the mayor of Tempio Pausania. And they will all require some translation. So we'll get cracking. Thank you very much. Please.
Buongiorno, è un grande onore per tutti noi ospitare nella sede regionale di EURISPES la 17ª conferenza internazionale della rete europea sui mercati regionali del lavoro, promossa dall'istituto tedesco IWAK, dall'Università Goethe di Francoforte, in collaborazione con il nostro istituto.
This morning, it's a great honor for all of us to host in EURISPES Regional Office the 17th annual meeting of the European Network on Regional Labour Market Monitoring, promoted by the German Institute, IWAK, and by Goethe University in Frankfurt in collaboration with our institute.
Conferenza che il nostro presidente, professor Gian Maria Fara, ha voluto fortemente si tenesse in Sardegna a Tempio Pausania. Grazie Presidente per aver voluto confermare un impegno già assunto a Mosca nel 2019 in occasione della 14ª conferenza internazionale.
Thank you, President, for confirming a commitment that was already taken in 2019 in Moscow in honor of the 14th International Meeting.
Fatta questa breve ma doverosa premessa, è con grande piacere che rivolgo un saluto di benvenuto agli studiosi, agli esperti e agli operatori del settore italiani ed esteri che sono riuniti oggi a Tempio per aprire un confronto assieme ai 28 dirigenti provenienti dal sud-est asiatico sul tema dal titolo L'importanza che assume l'intelligenza artificiale nella transizione verde e digitale dei mercati del lavoro regionali e locali in Europa. Prospettive sull'occupazione, la formazione, il collocamento e l'inclusione sociale.
That being said, it's with great pleasure that I welcome the researchers and all the experts, both Italian and foreign, that are united here also with the 28 delegates from Asia to deal with the topic of the importance of artificial intelligence in the eco and digital transition of regional and local labor markets in Europe, perspective on occupation, training and social inclusion.
Desidero ringraziare e porgere un caloroso saluto al sindaco di Tempio, Giovanni Antonio Addis, al vicepresidente della giunta regionale e assessore al lavoro, onorevole Alessandro Zeda, che si trova a Bruxelles per impegni istituzionali e che interverrà attraverso un videomessaggio, all'assessore regionale alla pubblica istruzione e cultura, onorevole Andrea Biancaneddu, che ci segue e ci sostiene ormai da anni, assieme all'assessore alla programmazione e bilancio Giuseppe Fasolini. L'onorevole Biancaneddu doveva intervenire in diretta, invece per motivi di salute non è possibile. Comunque mi ha chiesto la cortesia di salutare tutti voi. Desidero salutare inoltre il comandante provinciale della Guardia di Finanza, colonnello Stefano Rebecchesu, il comandante provinciale dell'Arma dei Carabinieri, colonnello Picchiazzi, e ovviamente i due comandanti delle compagnie di Tempio, sia della Finanza che dei Carabinieri. Grazie per essere qui con noi. A questo punto, prima di dare la parola all'avvocato Angelo Caliendo, componente del direttivo dell'EURISPES, che interverrà in rappresentanza dell'istituto e in nome e per conto del presidente Gian Maria Fara, voglio rivolgere un affettuoso saluto a due persone che meritano una menzione speciale. Mi riferisco al segretario generale dell'EURISPES, professor Marco Ricceri, e alla dottoressa Christa Larsen dell'Università Goethe di Francoforte, coordinatrice della rete europea, che assieme al professor Ricceri sono stati e sono l'anima e il motore di questo evento. A loro va il nostro ringraziamento e a tutti voi l'augurio di buon lavoro e buona permanenza a Tempio Pausania. Grazie.
I would like to also thank some other people like the mayor, Gianni Addis, the president of the regional council, Alessandro Zeda, regional consigliere for culture, Andrea Biancaredo, which was supposed to be on video, but for health reasons he isn't here, but he give you his greeting. And Andrea Biancaredo has followed us for many years with the consigliere of programming and budget, Giuseppe Fasolino, the provincial commander of the finance police, Stefano Rebechesu, and the provincial commander of Carabinieri, Picchiazzi. Before I give you the floor to Angelo Caliendo, I would like to thank and greet two special persons, the General Secretary of EURISPES, Marco Ricceri, and Dr. Christa Larsen of Frankfurt Goethe University, coordinator of the Europe Network. To them, our warm thanks, and to all of you, we wish you a good job and good permanence, and thank you. Thank you.
Prova, si sente? Buongiorno, buongiorno, grazie. Come detto prima Gerolamo Balata, ho oggi l'onore e l'onere di rappresentare oggi l'istituto e soprattutto di portare il saluto del nostro presidente, il professor Gian Maria Fara.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. For me, it's a pleasure to represent the president for EURISPES today here in Tempio Pausania, and it's an honor.
Dicevo onere e onore prima di tutto per il luogo che svolge oggi l'incontro della rete europea sul mercato del lavoro, e passo subito a ringraziare il sindaco del comune di Tempio Pausania, il dottor Giovanni Antonio Addis, città di Tempio Pausania, che ha accolto a braccia aperte l'EURISPES, ha messo a disposizione questa splendida sede. Il nostro presidente è orgoglioso del lavoro che svolge la sede regionale dell'istituto, e in questo sicuro avrò il suo plauso facendo i complimenti a Gerolamo Balata e a tutto lo staff dell'istituto.
I want to thank also the mayor and for this very nice hosting for these events. It was a very nice. It was very nice to be here, and also the president is very happy for the work that EURISPES regional office here is doing, the job that is doing here.
Rapporto creato tra l'EURISPES e il territorio con l'amministrazione comunale e col lavoro, dicevo, dello staff dell'EURISPES della regione Sardinia rappresenta una buona pratica, perché abbiamo sperimentato, messo in pratica quello che dovrebbe avvenire. C'è un istituto di ricerca che per il territorio ha svolto in questo una serie di importanti ricerche, penso al sughero, quella sul sughero, importante fonte di economia locale, al rapporto tra i giovani e il Covid, fatto sempre in regione Sardegna, al rapporto sui giovani, sugli anziani e il Covid invece sui giovani, fatti con la diocesi di Tempio Ampuras. Ricerche che poi hanno permesso, spero che il sindaco me ne darà atto, all'amministrazione comunale e anche a quella regionale E in questo io mi unisco ai saluti fatti da Gerolamo all'assessore Biancaretto e all'assessore Alessandro Zeda, vicepresidente della Regione.
Yes, it's very important for EURISPES the work that this office is doing here, because it's a well doing procedure that they want to underline, because it's a regional office that gives a very important service for the territory, because all the research are very deep and are very useful for the land, for the territory. For example, they made a research for the COVID, in the COVID period, and also very important for the young people, for the with the cyber securities. And so is a very important possibility, is a very important work that is necessary to follow.
Un rapporto, quello dell'istituto, che ha sempre coltivato soprattutto nel mondo delle istituzioni e nel settore della sicurezza, e anche per Regione Sardegna stiamo lavorando, il rapporto stretto, come diceva, con quello che sono chi opera poi nel mondo della sicurezza. E saluto oggi il colonnello Massimiliano Picchiarelli del Comando di Carabinieri e il colonnello Stefano Rettecchesi della Guardia di Finanza, che ringrazio per essere presenti oggi. Ritornando, e con questo concludo, a quello che dicevo prima, al rapporto tra onere e onore, l'onore è anche poter oggi parlare del tema del lavoro, un tema, una parola spesso abusata, soprattutto nella nostra società, utilizzata in maniera strumentale, ma che rappresenta l'unico vero mezzo per poter consentire a una società di essere coesa e viva. Il lavoro, che è presente nel nostro primo articolo della Costituzione, la parola lavoro, i padri costituenti, l'importanza data a questo settore e l'importanza che ha la rete, una duplice importanza per il lavoro svolto fino ad adesso, e io ringrazio la segretaria, la coordinatrice della rete, la professoressa Krista Larsen. Il lavoro nell'oggetto specifico del tema del lavoro e anche nell'importanza della rete, il dialogo, il confronto. Dialogo e confronto rappresentano le uniche vie per permettere all'Unione Europea di essere forte ed essere portatrice di pace nel mondo, e l'importanza allargata che ha l'incontro di oggi anche alla presenza della delegazione asiatica. L'Europa deve confrontarsi e comunicare con l'altra parte del mondo. È l'unico modo per poter mettere fine a una serie di violenze che purtroppo, non ci nascondiamo, oggi sono presenti nel nostro mondo.
An important thanks is for Krista, Dottoressa Krista, and also for the Asian delegation, because the important item of work is a very important item, because a lot of in this period is necessary to give a big importance to the network. It is, for Europe, is necessary to speak with the other part of the world to find the best solution. For Italy is very important the work, the job, because we have the first article for the Constitution that is dedicated for the importance of the work on the society.
Saluto anche il rappresentante delle istituzioni internazionali, dell'ILO, rappresentanti dell'OCSE, dell'Unione Europea e in particolar modo al capomissione dell'agente tedesca della GIZ, Darishit. E vi lascio con una breve riflessione, che penso possa essere spunto di un dibattito sul tema specifico scelto, l'intelligenza artificiale, la digitalizzazione. Ormai viviamo In un mondo dove è impossibile fermare la digitalizzazione e l'impiego e l'utilizzo dell'intelligenza artificiale all'interno di tutti i settori della nostra vita. Però c'è un problema. Non possiamo lasciare che questo sviluppo sia deregulation, privo di regole, privo di norme. C'è bisogno di confrontarsi e di trovare norme e sistemi che possano proteggere soprattutto le fasce più deboli della società. Grazie e buon lavoro.
Want to take the opportunity to speak about the art technology that is the item for today, and they say that it's very important for our life because already in our life we have the technology that help us, but it's necessary to have law, and it's not possible that we don't have the regulation for this new technology that are coming for the future. Thank you, everybody, and I wish a good work for today.
Elisabeth, stai lì? Sì. Buongiorno a tutti. La signora che vedete seduta là in fondo sulla destra è l'assessore del comune di Tempio al turismo che cortesemente tradurrà il mio breve discorso introduttivo. Quindi grazie, benvenuti, è un piacere per me essere qua. Saluto tutti gli illustri relatori, il presidente Gianmaria Fara, che purtroppo sappiamo non può essere qua, il direttore regionale dell'EURISPES Gerolamo Balata, il segretario generale dell'EURISPES Marco Ricceri e l'avvocato Angelo Caliendo, il componente dell'ufficio legale dell'EURISPES. Saluto tutte le autorità civili e militari presenti, non vi cito perché siete stati citati diverse volte, ma è un piacere avere qua il comandante provinciale della Guardia di Finanza, il comandante provinciale dei Carabinieri e i nostri comandanti dei Carabinieri, comandanti di compagnia dei Carabinieri e della Guardia di Finanza. Grazie per la vostra presenza.
Good morning. First of all, the mayor wishes to introduce myself. I work in the town hall of Tempio as a tourism office, and I will help the mayor with the translation. Obviously, he greets everybody with extreme sincerity, and he's very happy that they are all here today, the military forces, and also all those that are here to listen to this very interesting conference.
Un grande onore per me, per Tempio Pausania e per la Sardegna, ospitare la 17ª conferenza annuale della rete europea sui mercati regionali del lavoro. A tutti i convenuti, quindi, agli amministratori, ai relatori, al pubblico presente, a mio nome personale e come sindaco della città, porto il saluto della comunità di Tempio e dell'amministrazione che rappresento, che peraltro è qua presente perché sono gli assessori, con il più cordiale auguri di benvenuto.
It is an honor for Tempio Pausania in Sardinia to host the 17th annual conference of the European Network on Regional Labor Markets. To the attendees, the administrators, the speakers, the public, and my personal name as mayor of the city, I greet the community of Tempio and the administrators I represent with the most cordial greetings.
Oggi e domani, qui nella sede EURISPES, esperti del mondo scientifico e accademico internazionale, responsabili e operatori dei servizi dell'impiego europei ed extraeuropei, istituzioni e delegazioni provenienti da diverse parti del mondo si confronteranno su temi vitali per la nostra esistenza, le nostre società e il nostro futuro.
Today and tomorrow, here at the EURISPES headquarters, experts from the international scientific and academic world, managers and operators of European and non-European employment services, institutions and delegations from different parts of the world will discuss issues vital to our existence, our societies, and our future.
Per questa importante opportunità desidero dare merito al presidente dell'EURISPES, Gian Maria Fara, nostro illustre concittadino, che saluto con affetto e stima e ringrazio per questo ambizioso e prezioso incontro che oggi abbiamo il piacere di presentare. E ringrazio anche il direttore regionale Gerolamo Balata, anch'egli nostro concittadino, che saluto con gratitudine per l'attenzione e la professionalità con cui da sempre sovraintende alle tante occasioni di collaborazione con la nostra città.
For this important opportunity, I would like to give credit to the president of EURISPES, Gian Maria Fara, our illustrious fellow citizen, whom I greet with affection and esteem, and thank you for this ambitious and precious meeting that today we have the pleasure of presenting together with the regional president, Gerolamo Balata, also our fellow citizen, whom I greet with gratitude for the attention and professionalism with which it has always been overseas to many opportunities for collaboration with our city.
Consentitemi inoltre un saluto e un ringraziamento particolare a Christa Larsen dell'Università di Francoforte, che coordina la rete europea per i mercati del lavoro, e all'Agenzia di Cooperazione GIZ di Francoforte, che ha promosso questo evento che porta Tempio nel mondo e che consente a noi tutti, rappresentanti delle istituzioni comunali, regionali e territoriali qui presenti, di ricevere spunti di riflessione preziosi, innovativi e strategici dalle voci autorevoli dei tanti ospiti presenti.
Also, allow me a special greeting and thanks to Christa Larsen of the University of Frankfurt, which coordinates the network, and to the cooperation agency GIS in Frankfurt, which promoted this event that brings Tempio into the world, and which allows us, all of us representative of the regional and territorial institution present here, to receive food for thought, precious, innovative, and strategic by the authoritative voices of many guests present.
Gli esperti in queste 2 giornate di confronto internazionale il compito di capire come le nostre società potranno fronteggiare le nuove sfide globali determinate dai cambiamenti strutturali che impongono realtà quali l'intelligenza artificiale, la green economy e quale ruolo esse giocheranno anche in relazione ai nuovi mercati del lavoro.
The experts in these 2 days have an The experts in these 2 days of international discussion have the task of understanding how our societies will be able to face the new global changes caused by the structural changes that require realities such as artificial intelligence, green economy, and big data, and what role they will also play in relation to new labor markets.
A noi amministratori la responsabilità di prenderci cura al meglio possibile dei nostri concittadini e delle nostre comunità, promuovendo e adottando modelli sostenibili per il nostro futuro. Grazie.
We administrators are responsible for taking care of our fellow citizens and communities as best as we can, promoting and adopting sustainable models for our future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nobody gets away from the network without a present, I'm afraid. So I have got some gifts for our speakers. 1 second. So once again, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Angelo. Thank you, Dr. Valata. We now have our first technical challenge of the day. But before we jump into that, I just say how fantastic it is to be meeting in person again. It's been quite a long 2 years of isolation with the pandemic and with COVID. So it's really wonderful to be able to kind of meet in person, and let's enjoy that and celebrate that. And it was really great to hear our three speakers really emphasizing the importance of skills in meeting the transformations of society. So our topic is all about artificial intelligence, but it really is about the kind of transformation of the skills of society to meet the challenges of a green and sustainable future, which hopefully artificial intelligence will help us to achieve. So our next presentation is a video. It's a film by Alessandro Zeda, and hopefully, I'm looking to my colleagues. Hopefully this will work. So Alessandro is Vice President of the Regional Government, Sardinian Regional Councillor, and has responsibility for employment, vocational training, cooperation, and social security. There she is.
Un saluto da parte mia, del Presidente di tutta la Regione Sardegna, a tutti i partecipanti al convegno EURISPES. Quest'anno c'è il convegno EURISPES, quest'anno un saluto da parte mia, del Presidente di tutta la Regione Sardegna. Un saluto da parte
Just as website. Absolutely.
un saluto da parte mia.
We're trying to make myself yes. To go into the presentation. sound through here, just put the mic against that.
Il computer, se proviamo dal computer e mettiamo il microfono.
I think the phone should work now.
Sorry about this, ladies and gentlemen, we're having a few technical difficulties and we're trying to stream everything through Zoom and it's not playing nicely for us.
Try to just play it normally and connect. Un saluto da parte mia, del Presidente della tutta la Regione di Sardegna, tutti i partecipanti alle convenzioni. Per quest'anno scelta la formula della sessione sulla trasmissione vicine e sulla digitale, ma in particolar modo l'importanza delle...
Is it Italian?
Italian.
Un saluto da parte mia, del Presidente della tutta la Regione di Sardegna, tutti i partecipanti alle convenzioni. Per quest'anno scelta la formula.
So do we need a translator for this?
I think she talks in English.
Do you want to press? Are we going with this?
No, I think it doesn't make sense, right? You need to- We'll skip it. We'll try again later, okay? Because she's going to do the last steps now.
Okay.
But maybe we can find a solution. No, we don't. We don't need
We're just going to present
no,
that.
yes.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to skip a little bit further into the agenda and we'll have presentations by Krista and by, I think, Duncan Brown, if Duncan is here. And then we can have a little bit of a coffee break and hopefully we can get the tech fixed and then we can have the live streaming and so on at that point. So someone who needs absolutely no introduction, Krista Larson, the head of the network, please.
Kriege ich das groß? So groß. Groß hier ist ein Ding. Ja, du kannst einfach draufklicken, dann geht's weiter. Auf die.
Okay, good morning, everybody. So digitalization could be quite challenging, as we learned today. So technology is one thing, and that's what we always experience. So we have a lot of advances, but applying it, it's really difficult sometimes. But we try to do our best. And I think it's a question of the mindset and the attitudes. So we try to explore further and further and implement more and more digitalization. That's the way how we should do that. And so Andrew did a great job. So we simply switch in the program. And so we get started with the topic of our annual meeting, artificial intelligence. So the topic this year of our annual meeting is very much related to the discussion which we had during the last 2 years during the pandemic times when we had only virtual meetings. And the big issue for us that we have a huge transformation on labor markets all across Europe, all across European regions, also outside of Europe, quite a bit. And so we call this, okay, this does not, okay. So this does, no, it does not flip. Okay, they try to fix that. So we have a lot of changes caused by different trends. For example, demographic change is one of the major drivers in these days. And the demographic change means that the people in my generation, they will leave the labor force in the next 10, 15 years. And this is the largest group in the labor force. And that causes a huge lack of skilled labor, especially labor with leadership qualifications. And so we have not sufficient young people to enter the labor force. And that's why we have this lack of skilled labor. And we need to find ways how we could solve this problem. So demographic change is quite a challenge. And then secondly, we have also the trend of the climate change. We talked a lot on this. And so that also means there are new jobs, there are new framework conditions for us. We also have digitalization, what we focus on, which brings us a lot of changes. And we have also societal changes. So that people now make experience with working remotely. And so that changes a lot in the way how we work, how we communicate. And we have a young generation. So the generation we have now in universities, their mindset is quite changed in a way that they are socialized, very individualized, and that they have certain value systems which are kind of different from the generation which is leaving the labor force in the next 10 years. So these are quite challenging conditions which we have. And so this is a bundle of trends we have to face. At the same time, we have unexpected events like the pandemic. Nobody expected COVID-19 and the war in Ukraine and all the consequences coming out of that. So all these different trends and events cause effects. And in the center of this effect, we think there's the labor market. And so in improving labor market function, that can help also to support this transformation which we have to go through. And one of the major effects from all of this effect is that we have a lack of skilled labor. So we need to find solutions for that. And that's, oh, the picture is here. Wonderful. Thank you. And that's why we think, thank you, we have to do a lot to improve the functioning of regional and local labor markets. Because if you have functional regional local labor markets, that makes your economy run, that makes your region stable, that makes the people happy, and that's what we all want. So we are interested in having functional labor markets to adapt to all of this transformative effects. And so how can we become functional labor markets? The first and foremost point is that we need transparency. We need to understand what's going on the labor market, what is our basic situation. And from there on, if we have adequate transparency, we can start developing strategies to cope with all these effects I just mentioned. And so that's the work in our network that we think we should provide transparency and the support for decision-making. And across Europe, we have 750 regional and local labor market observatories. These are organizations observing the labor market. So one of these observatories is here in Sardinia, it's EURISPES, and they inform decision makers on the situation of the labor market, support them to improve their strategies and to make the labor market functional. So one of our strategic approaches to improving the functionality of regional local labor markets is focusing on digitalization and improve the process of digitalization, because we think this is a major strategy. It could help us, especially in the way as we have this general challenge of the lack of skilled labor. Digitalization can save working places, so can with automation can help us that we do not need that many skilled labor. So this is an important point for us. On the other hand, as the transformative power is that strong, so we have a lot of changes in skills requirements. So we experienced during the pandemic that we had to adapt to all this new IT technology for being able to communicate with others. Our work environment changes quite a bit. So we need continuously to adapt with our skills. And so also digitalization can help us to do this adaptation process. There are nice digital tools out there which can help us individualize to improve our skills. So we think these are two strands which are really important for managing the great transformation which we are facing. So working and discussing digitalization, it's not a new topic for our network. We started already in 2015 focusing on digitalization. And that was the very beginning. And when we started talking about digitalization, we realized in different countries, we have different understandings or different mindsets, how we think what digitalization is about and in what way it can help us. For example, I'm coming from Germany, and we have in Germany in 15-16, we had the discourse, we are expecting the digital revolution. So meaning digitalization is not here yet. It's coming and it's overwhelming us, and we need to get ready to be able to manage the situation. So this is the German mindset. We came to this international meeting and we reported on the German perspective, as we like to do. And so the Italian colleague, the Spanish colleagues, they brought out laughing. They said, what, a revolution? No, it's an evolutionary process. And reflect, digitalization has started already. Yeah, we use already digital tools for our communication, and it's an evolutionary process which steadily develops, and it's a process which we can create, where we have an impact on, where we can adapt to, and we can decide what way or what direction the digitalization should take. We were very surprised. This is a wonderful interpretation. So that made us Germans very happy. Meanwhile, 7 years later, we would agree with this position. Most of the Southern European countries, Spain, Italy, also England, the Scandinavian countries, they said evolution. Okay, the Germans gave up now on the revolutionary idea, so we go for evolution too. And so here we are, and we are going to discuss digitalization as an evolutionary process, and in our mindset, and I think that's all of us share, we think we can decide and we can structure this process. And that's why we discuss this time on artificial intelligence, a special development which within the digitalization process. This is what we have in mind in our meeting this year. So what we know already, and we know it because we have produced this book. So this is a approach the network has for all the ones who do not know the network so well. We choose a topic. A year ago, we did that. We choose the topic of artificial intelligence, and then we ask the network members to write contributions. So writing on their experience with artificial intelligence, or ask people to write articles. And so we got 35 network members who wrote contributions. We put that in a book, and then we did an analysis on all of these articles to find out what is the state of discussion, what is the state of implementation of artificial intelligence in labor markets across Europe and beyond. And so the results we can use here today to start our discussion. So we have basic knowledge on that. And so from the anthology, we learn that there is no simultaneous development across the regions in Europe. We have some very advanced regions concerning artificial intelligence and its application. And we have some regions where artificial intelligence is not really implemented yet. So it's a broad spectrum, and it depends very much on the economy in a region. It depends very much on the competences which are available in a region. And it depends very much also on the political framework, regulation mainly, which makes possible in how far you can develop artificial intelligence and implement it. For example, as Germans, we have a very strong regulation. So a lot of things cannot be developed in Germany, but we can see that in the Netherlands, we can see that in Spain. And exchanging with people from other European regions, we learn a lot about innovations which we cannot implement in our country. But this is very productive to have such an exchange, because you understand what all is possible. And we have people from Asia here, especially also Malaysia. Let me point out the colleagues from Malaysia who are very advanced with our topic today, artificial intelligence, and to exchange and to understand what's possible. This is very important to go further and know what you would like to develop. So our point is today and tomorrow to exchange with each other and to learn about best practice examples, to get motivated to go for that in your own region. Now, let me come to the topic of artificial intelligence. So if we ask people, what is artificial intelligence? People explore a little bit in their daily life. So where are you confronted with artificial intelligence? And every one of us is confronted already or uses artificial intelligence. So most of us are familiar with artificial intelligence when we do online shopping, marketing. Yeah, so data is collected on our behavior, what we choose, what we are shopping. And so we get suggestions, what else we could shop. So this is artificial intelligence. So it's applied in marketing. Or all the ones having a voice in the phone, talking, a human voice talking to us, and her name is Alexa, or so on. This is also artificial intelligence. Or if we have medical issues and our organs get monitored, we have these wonderful pictures where we can see our organs from the inside. So this is also artificial intelligence. Or if we think about production processes, and robots are used there instead of people. So this is also artificial intelligence. So all of us have already an idea where to find artificial intelligence. So there is in the EU, on the EU level, a high-level expert group, and they made up a definition what artificial intelligence is about. And you can read that, what they defined. So artificial intelligence is hardware and software systems, and these systems are designed by humans. So it's very important to have always the human in the focus, and they are designed in a way that they support humans in perceiving the environment of humans through data acquisition, interpretation of this data which is collected, reasoning what it means, what we see here as a result, and then giving us ideas or hints for the best decision to make. So, but it's very important, this is also important today and tomorrow, to talk about the application and the use and also ethic issues. So we have a group of colleagues from the Sapienza University in Rome sitting on in the second row. They are experts on these issues. So if we apply, we always have to think about the relation from humans to artificial intelligence and ethic codes. So, and you see there are certain technologies, but in fact, what artificial intelligence also provides us with its real-time data. And as labor market researchers and consultants, we are very much interested in having real-time data, and artificial intelligence helps us quite a bit to have such data. So we have a scheme, a structure for how we approach artificial intelligence today and tomorrow, and that's what you see here. So of interest is to find out what are the effects of artificial intelligence on regional and local labor markets, and how these effects work on a region, on a regional and a local labor market. So you see the top line and the bottom line. So this is the cause and the effect, and we want to learn about the effect. So the green line at the bottom. Tomorrow, Friday evening, we want to know more about the effects on regional and local labor markets. And how is it done? This is what you see in the middle. We will talk and discuss about what are the effects of artificial intelligence on sectors, on occupations, on work practice. And how do we do that? We do that along 3 strands, which you see here. So we focus on, in the middle column, you see job gain. So artificial intelligence provides us with new jobs, with new competences. So there are new competence requirements. It's not in all the sectors, all the occupations the same, but we will focus on that. So where do we have impact on artificial intelligence, and what does that mean for skills? What does that mean for job descriptions? And at the same time, we will combine with that artificial intelligence is also a tool which can help us to generate big data. And big data is a wonderful source for us to have real-time data. So this is the topics to discuss. Then on the right column, you see, as artificial intelligence and digitalization in general, also via the process of automation, provides us with job loss. Also other trends we talked before cause some job losses. So we focus here on the organization, the public employment services. So the public employment services are well represented in our network. And so we ask here the question, how can public employment services be supported by artificial intelligence? So in a way, they do something which they call profiling, meaning they profile the skill or the competence set of a person and try to match that to the job openings. So how can artificial intelligence improve this profiling, and how can artificial intelligence or tools derived from artificial intelligence to help unemployed people to improve their skills, and to improve their skills in a way that the skills fit to the demands of companies, to the labor market, and to help them to re-enter the labor market or the labor force. So this is the strand which we will also discuss. And then on the left column, this is the third strand which we will discuss. So what are the changes in skills which are caused by artificial intelligence? So what new or modified skill sets do we need to adapt to this new technology? And secondly, in how far can artificial intelligence help us to adapt to these changes, to improve our skills? So there are wonderful tools out there for self-learning and for lifelong learning, and we want to go in this topic as well. So this is basically the program for today and tomorrow, and we will split that a little bit. Today we start with the middle column. So in the first sessions we look on Where do we have an impact of artificial intelligence in sectors, in occupations, to get an overview and discuss that, to explore the topic, and how can we use artificial intelligence for creating big data. And tomorrow we will start to focus on PS, so the public employment services and what they do with artificial intelligence, and also the skills topic. So what can you expect today? We will have three dimensions, which we will discuss during the day. First, we will have real presentations, and we also do working groups on that, in the state of the art on artificial intelligence in certain sectors and occupations. And we will hear about comparisons between European states and the United States. And we will have also in-depth exploration for the situation in Italy. So artificial intelligence in labor market research is quite elaborated in Italy at the University of Bicocca in Milano. So they are one of the leading organizations. So we will hear about their findings. And then secondly, we will have another strand of discussions that there are branches got hit strongly by the pandemic. And I think some of these branches are here also in Sardinia: tourism, culture, music, etc., etc. And so there is a contribution today in looking how can one rebuild or restructure or reactivate these sectors which were hit so strongly by the pandemic by using artificial intelligence. And this is really interesting to discuss this, because there is already some practice to talk about. But if we use artificial intelligence to restructure these branches, that has effects on the way how employment looks like, and it has effects on the training programs, on the VET systems. And the question is, do we have a VET system which is that flexible enough to support such a modification process? So we will focus on that, and the art and culture branch is representing all the branches, all the service branches which were hit so strongly during the pandemic times. And we will have a third dimension of discussion. We start with the ethic discussion. We look on the chances and the risks for humans and different groups of humans when artificial intelligence is implemented in working processes. What does that mean for people in different situations? Do we need regulation? Do we need certain framework conditions to support the situation of individuals? And so this is the third discussion. That's basically the program. And I would like to invite everybody to come into the discussions, to join into the discussions. And I think we have wonderful presentations which we can expect today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Duncan, please come and join us. Thank you. Before you get away, Krista, are there any questions for Krista? No, I have one actually, which is kind of on the theme. For a long time now, I've been watching people like PricewaterhouseCoopers and KPMG, Deloitte, and every few years they bring out a report saying 60% of jobs are going to be lost because of digitalization and artificial intelligence, or the entire world of work is going to be completely transformed within the next 3 years. And it never really seems to happen. So are we looking at something which eventually is going to be a really major change and is going to be a big shake-up of the economy? Or are we looking at evolutionary change and changes to job sets and the descriptions that we have within the work that we do? So are we looking at that kind of drop-off, or do you think we're looking at something much more evolutionary?
Okay, you asked me as a German, right? With a German mindset. Okay, it's an evolutionary process. Up to now, what we learned from digitalization, it's an evolutionary process. But it's important to be aware how technology develops, how it's implemented, what effect it has, and to reflect on that. This is important, but it's not a revolution which is coming up now and we need to get ready. So it's nothing to be scared of. It's more a process where we should have a lock on and should decide how we can structure, how we can support the situation. And that's what we should do here.
Yeah, we have another question, Daniel.
One more question. Is that interesting? Is something kind of AI I know that software analyzed the answer in the labor market, which skills are asked for by companies, and is there any application?
Okay, so so Daniel's question is about innovations in the supply side of employment and skills around artificial intelligence. So I guess new developments from colleges and universities and so on.
There are some roles already who have been programmed for skills development. That's how they call it.
Right then, everybody. I'm very pleased to introduce Duncan Brown. Duncan has a particularly sexy title. He is the Vice President of Global Innovation, which is fantastic. I'm very envious. Duncan's LinkedIn profile is even more fantastic. It says, I bring the tools of economics and data to tackle the questions of people and place, which is something I'm going to steal and put on my Twitter handle very soon indeed. Duncan's worked at a number of UK organisations, the UK Commission for Employment and Skills, CFE Research and Consulting, and even back to Business Links that people of my age might remember if they're worked in the UK. So please welcome Duncan. And if we could get Duncan's presentation on here, please.
Well, I'm not sure it'll take that long, but it depends how many questions we get, I guess. But yeah.
Morning, everybody. So I'm actually here on behalf of some colleagues who did the conference paper, but Layla, one of the authors, was going to come, but when the conference got rescheduled, it clashed with her wedding, and understandably, the wedding was a bit more important. When the conference paper was submitted, it said that we were MZ Burning Glass, but then the marketing people got a hold of it, and so now we're Lifecast. And so we're a specialist in labour market data. We use a lot of AI ourselves, and I can bore you to tears about all the data that we have, but I'll get on with the presentation for now. So I'm going to talk about a big data approach to looking at labour market change around AI. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Okay. So is that better? Yes. So I'm going to talk to you about some research that we've done using big data. So we gathered a lot of job postings, and the key findings, as it says here, are about the labour market demand for AI skills in those online job postings. And the headline is that demand has doubled over the last 7 years. That's a big change, as we can all imagine. And the interesting thing about this data is it allows us to start looking beneath the surface. And so all those kind of sectoral, occupational and location questions that Krista was talking about, the data allows us to unpack those. And so what we see, for example, is that while AI labour demand is growing fastest and is most concentrated in the ICT industry, we also see it taking a fast growth around finance and insurance and around professional, scientific and technical activities. So it's not just in the sort of the ICT industry that we see it. Then that next point is that it's not just AI skills on their own. These are complex jobs. They require a range of skills for people to do them well. You can't just be an expert in AI technology. You need the ancillary technologies, and you also need soft skills around them as well. The data we have here looks across 4 countries. It looks at France, Germany, Italy, and Sweden. On one of the slides, we also throw in the US, because the US has Silicon Valley. In many ways, it kind of sets the benchmark for discussions of digital skills in general. So we just use that to just sort of compare. And what we see is that Sweden is the leader amongst these European countries. It's a similar level to the US in terms of the composition of demand accounted for by AI skills. We also see that Italy has seen the fastest growth, but starting from a lower base. And so in many ways, that's a convergence story. And then that last point there, speaking about those kinds of AI skill areas that Krista was talking about before, machine learning is seeing the fastest growth. And so the use of big data, especially to understand the pattern of behaviors that you can appeal to in terms of customers and in terms of improving product design. Those are the kind of skills developments that we see growing fastest. And that's across countries as well, although beneath that, there's some interesting differences. So the motivation, speaking to what Krista was talking about before, is that it's a well-discussed point. And as Andrew said, we get these recurrent big consultancy reports threatening doom and apocalyptic job destruction as a result of automation. But we know these technologies are sort of developing. In many ways, it's a continuation of other technological changes that have also automated away some jobs and created many more. So it's quite a sort of a nuanced story in truth, because it changes as many jobs as it sort of replaces. And we know that that sort of change has been in the air for some time. These technologies have been developing, but we also know that the pandemic has happened, and in many ways, in most countries, that seems to have accelerated the change. Big growth in working from home and remote working, and also big growth in the use of internet services, because when people can't get together, they've had to find other ways of coordinating economic behavior. So we wanted to look at that in a bit more detail, and we wanted to use our data. So as it says there, we have a proprietary database of 1 billion job postings growing every day across many countries. And we wanted to look at how AI adoption is differing across countries and regions. We wanted to look at how that differs by industry within that, and also how the skill requirements are also changing. So in terms of method, we collect job postings data from across 45,000 online job sites. As I say, we are collecting those every day. And we have algorithms to parse them and deduplicate them, so we can get as close to a good read on the recruitment trend across different countries. And we do a lot of work to enrich them, to categorize their title and occupation, their industry, their region, and the skills that are being sought within those job postings. And here we've used the ESCO skill taxonomy, which some of you may be familiar with. It has around 6,000 to 7,000 skill items in there. And we also use some keywords that, because AI technology has a lot of very specific terms of art that we found were pretty good ways of locating job demands around that sector. And we organize those into several, I think that's 5 actually, skill clusters: artificial intelligence, machine learning, neural networks, and robotics. Job postings were tagged as an AI job if they caught any one of those skill or keyword items. So there's a range of intensity. Some of them have many of them in, some of them only have one. And so this is kind of a first stage in terms of understanding the proximal AI labour market. Some of those jobs may be in businesses where the job links into it, but it isn't necessarily fully composed of AI. But it gives us a sense of the sort of the region of AI labour market demand within those job adverts. That's right. So the first thing we wanted to do was just look at the sort of the depth of AI demand over time across these different countries. And as I say here, we use the US as just a sort of a comparator because it has Silicon Valley. It's an interesting one to compare. And so what you see there is the sort of the cyan line is the US, and then the darker blue line is Sweden. And you can see that although Sweden, if you go back to 2014, when these data start, Sweden was kind of at a similar level to Germany. Over these past, over the sort of the next 5 years, Sweden saw really fast growth. And in fact, 2020 was even a bit ahead of the US in terms of the percentage of job postings that have AI skills mentioned in them. I should say that the proportions here are quite small. So even at the top there, it's 1.5%. AI jobs are very specialized. They're not sweeping the labor market because they are the people who are really deploying the technology. Germany and France have kind of moved in parallel, still fast growth, kind of doubling, tripling sort of territory. But you know, there is a bit of a breakaway in these past few years of the US and Sweden, sort of significantly larger, and Italy there, sort of starting from a low base, but seeming to converge with France and Germany. So the next thing we wanted to do was look at the industry spread, and again we compare here between 2014 and 2021. And you see in all of these countries, it's the ICT industry that, not surprisingly, is the dominant consumer of AI skills. And then we see that sort of professional, scientific and technical activities, education, manufacturing, financial and insurance are also sources of growth, but it does vary by country. In Sweden, it's kind of at the professional and the manufacturing side of things. In Italy, it still seems to be very dominated by ICT with some representation around the sort of manufacturing side as well. In Germany, it's a sort of a broader spread. So there are kind of important differences there about how concentrated it is within the ICT industry. Next, we wanted to look at the sort of the skill dimensions involved. And so we group skills into sort of three main categories to understand the mix of skills that were being sought. And so we looked at AI skills specifically. Those were the terms that we were searching for to see which ones were coming up to the top. And machine learning has been dominant from 2014 to 2021, always ranked one. Artificial intelligence itself is moving up, which suggests it's becoming a more recognized term for these kinds of jobs. But what's really interesting is at the bottom there, you see deep learning and TensorFlow, which is a particular AI technology, really moving quite rapidly up this list of skills in terms of demand. So people are becoming a lot more specific about technologies as well. But these other domains of skill are also really important. So soft skills are very important. They make a significant part of the content of the skills in demand for these jobs. And we see adaptiveness to change, team working, problem solving, creative thinking. And so it's not just enough to master AI. If you're going to have one of these jobs, you need this wider skill set. You need to be able to work creatively and in a team. And then on the technical side, as well as AI, you need the sort of the wider range of technology skills in order to allow you to implement your know-how around AI. So things like computer science, SQL, administering ICT systems. Understandably, these are the tools that make AI come to life. So they're a really important part of it. It should say that the soft skills and the technical skills are slower changing. They've been more consistent over time, whereas the AI skills do seem to see these bigger movements with deep learning and TensorFlow coming up. So it's there where you get the dynamic side of labour market demand. So then what we wanted to do was look at the individual countries that we've got data for to really just start digging beneath the surface of what that demand looks like in different places. And so we look first of all at the geography, and not surprisingly, because we know that knowledge intensive jobs tend to benefit a lot from agglomeration effect, where jobs cluster together, especially in major urban centres. And so we see here in Germany, for example, Berlin and then Hamburg and then Munich as well are really well represented. And then the rest of the country demand is much lower. And so that kind of geographical effect is important. And of course, in many countries, this same geographic effect has significant implications for spatial inequality. And so that's something in terms of the labour market change that we need to be aware of, that those kind of spatial inequalities that we've seen in many countries, including my own, over the past sort of 20, 30 years are, potentially going to be exacerbated by AI rather than solved by it. So that's something that is a consistent pattern there. And then what we see in terms of the occupations at the top left there is that systems analysts in Germany are really high up. It's kind of understanding where to place AI that is kind of the dominant job, followed closely by software developers. And I think, if I remember correctly, that in other countries it's software developers that lead, but that probably reflects the wider distribution of industries that you find AI skills being demanded in Germany. And then in terms of the skill mix, machine learning has boomed in Germany. So we see the orange dots here at 2014 percentage and the blue dots at 2021. Machine learning at the top there. Visual image recognition is high, but is actually stable from 2014 to 2021. So it's obviously an important area of technology for Germany, but has been for some time. So that's less of an area of change. Whereas some of these others, AI itself, neural networks, they've gone from near zero to actually being quite significant demand. So it's quite an interesting mix that you see there. And one of the interesting ones for me is, as an admirer of Germany as a manufacturing economy, is that robotics has been relatively stable in demand, actually. And so that's a really fascinating finding, I think, because it sort of suggests that the AI developments in Germany aren't kind of necessarily spreading to its kind of economic focus. So then we move to Italy, and again, we see this urban centre with Lazio as the sort of the primary NUTS2 region. And then in the north, we see Lombardy and Trento that are also quite high up there. And then the rest of the country much lower. And here, software developers, you might remember that when we were looking at industries, it was the ICT industry that was really dominant in AI growth in Italy. And so therefore, it's software developers that lead. But again, systems analysts are up there, but you've got to understand how and where to apply AI technology as well. And in terms of the skills mix, as I said at the start, Italy has seen the fastest growth, but from a lower base. And so I think it's AI demand has increased sixfold since 2014. So it's a real big change. And so you see machine learning and AI both were near zero in 2014, and they're now way up there by comparison. NLP, neural networks again, robotics again, Italy quite a strong manufacturing sector, but we saw this in the industries that it's ICT where the demand seems to be. It may well be, of course, that you get a sort of a cascading effect that you go from a very low AI demand, it grows in ICT, and then that starts to complement other industries. And so that'll be something that will be interesting to track within Italy in the next few years. And then Sweden, our European leader in these countries that we've studied, we see that, again, that geographic pattern, Stockholm leading, followed by Gothenburg and then Uppsala. So we see that again there. Software developers lead, followed by systems analysts again. So a very consistent pattern on occupations with that slight variation within Germany. Again, machine learning, huge boom, really has become the sort of the dominant technology within the AI space over these past 7 years under study here. AI also becoming a much more recognized term of art within the labour market. Visual image recognition, a lot like Germany, it was already there, it hasn't grown so much, so it's kind of, that's not been an area that's seen big growth. Whereas robotics, and again, Sweden, a really big manufacturing sector, but here we do see robotics actually seeing quite a change. So, and if there is that kind of cascading effect, Sweden with its kind of further progress might be actually evidence of that to sort of see it going through there. So yeah, really quite a fascinating case. And then finally, in terms of the countries, we've got France, again, the urban pattern, Paris dominant, Toulouse sort of quite a distant second actually in the Midi-Pyrenees region. Here, even more than Germany, systems analyst roles that lead rather than software developers. But again, here on the skills, machine learning and artificial intelligence, huge change over these years of study. What's interesting though for me is it's the natural language processing and neural networks that have seen really big swings from quite a low base. And I know that Paris obviously has a really kind of fast-moving tech sector, and so that's probably the sort of a lot of web development going on there. So that's quite interesting. And again, though, much like most of the other countries except Sweden, we don't see that kind of effect in robotics and so on. So it's a very interesting pattern there. So to look ahead, this data shows a lot of promise in helping us to track this as a technology development. It's the kind of data that we didn't have, for previous technology developments. As Krista said, within the framework that Krista showed us, this is about job gain. It shows us about the creative side, not the destructive side of technology change. We're looking at how jobs are changing, what jobs are coming through, not what jobs are being replaced by them. So it's the leading edge of the technology change. And so that's an important one because it helps us to see where the sort of the opportunities are being created. And so even if you're handling the destructive side, it's still very valuable and important to understand where the new developments are so you can look to complement them with people who are affected by that. It really does warrant continued monitoring. There's so much change here, and as I was talking about, you can sort of see that potential theory of a cascading effect there, where you see the sort of the ICT industry change first, and then maybe it affects other industries, but maybe that pattern won't hold up. Maybe we'll see it in different ways in different places. I think the sort of the existing industry and skill mix will really lead to very different changes in different places. And as I say, the sort of the spatial impact of it, where we know that these jobs will concentrate primarily in urban centres, is something for policymakers to really kind of wrestle with, because it's how you get those industry effects widened that you see it sort of distributing across the sort of the wider regional economies. I think how AI demand is represented in terms of job roles is a really important dimension. So we talked there about systems analysts and software developers, but I think going the next layer to understand what those jobs look like. As AI continues to emerge as a technology, once upon a time we didn't have software developers. That's a new job category. And as AI technology becomes more ubiquitous, we should expect to see that having an effect on it, probably in more detail level than the sort of the 4-digit ISCO occupations allow here, but it does warrant further investigation on that front, I think. And then finally, one of the sort of the limitations with this work is around the ESCO skills, because it's kind of, it doesn't have the sort of the layer of detail that we need to. We've invested a lot as a company in full translations of our own skills library, which is openly available. And we've invested in translating that into the major European languages because we really want to sort of investigate this in a lot more depth, and we'll be bringing that to our data as this year completes. And so into next year, we'll be able to look in a lot more detail at these kinds of changes. And so, yeah, I'd love to talk about that with anybody that would like to work with us. So, yeah, and that's my presentation. So if anybody has any questions, then.
Are there any questions for Duncan? Yeah.
Just a couple of technical questions. Have you analyzed also the skills connected with the level of education and level of qualifications? I mean, these are all top high-level skills, or did we have just found the kind of demand the middle qualification part of workforce, for instance? My first question. The second one, okay. The second question is about the list of emerging technical skills you showed. I'd like to know if there are just digital skills or the technical skills includes also other technical skills like industrial skills or.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the first point, we haven't specifically looked at the educational dimension in this work. One of the limitations of job postings data on education is that often employers assume an educational level about a job and don't always mention it. And so it's a slightly, there's an implicit education level with a lot of occupational labour markets. Now, in fairness, the occupations that come to the top here tend to be graduate level occupations. And so I think that that is certainly where we are at the moment. And I think that question about the sort of the cascading of AI into a wider set of industries will be where that education question starts to become far more important, because when it is primarily in ICT, in finance and insurance, professional, scientific and technical, well, we know these are sectors that are dominated by the university educated. So I think at this stage, we can probably reliably assume that it is still very much in that part of the labour market. As it spreads to other occupations, then it will be really interesting to find out. However, that, as I say, there is a limit on job posting data in that sense, because unless employers explicitly say so, we can only work on this sort of the typical level that we know from the labour market. So that's that first. On the skills question, so my understanding is, as I say, I'm representing my colleagues here, so that from what I know of the work, I would assume that the technical skills would include the full range of non-AI, non-soft skills from ESCO. So they will be in there. I mean, obviously, we've only surfaced the top 5 there, but they will be in there. I think one of the reasons why I mentioned about our own skills taxonomy is that we think that that's much richer. And so as we are able to build on this work, I think we'll be able to explore it in a lot more depth in terms of those wider range of skills. And as I say, the fanning out of AI demand into other industries will bring those kind of complementarities between skills, really to centre stage, because it's kind of at what point are AI skills bleeding into other kinds of work is, to come back to Andrew's question to Krista, my own view is that the biggest impact of technology change is in changing within jobs rather than changing jobs themselves. It's not many occupations actually disappear over the long period. If you go back to kind of Victorian times, we've not actually lost that many occupations, but many of them have been transformed. And so I think actually understanding those kind of complementary skills become really central.
Any further?
So maybe a couple of more questions. Thanks for the excellent insights. I think I'm very much like to appreciate the information on skills bundles. I'm very interested to share. I think a lot of us are sort of trying to get our heads around. 2 questions. You showed sort of the evolution across sectors. So I'm sort of a follow-up question on this, whether the trend, the increase in AI jobs, whether that's been something you observe extensive or the intensive margin, which, I mean, is it essentially bigger, greater demand for software engineers, just, sort of penetrating new sectors, or is it, jobs that previously didn't have AI tasks actually now require AI skills?
Yeah.
And, maybe you know. I have to go with the second question first. Yeah. And then on the spatial effect, I think you rightly alluded to the information that based on urban economic theory and on evidence, we know that clearly those are going to be co-located, concentrated in major cities. But I was wondering, I think you showed us sort of like a static point in time. So you showed disparity across regions. Did you also look into changes, region changes across time? Sort of like, what we I think will be interested in knowing is whether you see any regions actually successfully catching up. So is there, maybe outside of Stockholm or Berlin, etc., other regional factors that allow some regions to, close the gap within their country? Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks. So on the first question, I think we're very much at the extensive margin point so far. I think when you see the sort of the top occupations there, they're all software developers, systems analysts, and so we're seeing it there. So I think we're still some distance from the kind of the leap to sort of general purpose technology translating into general application of the technology. So I think that we're still in that space. as I say, I think the interesting thing will be the next phase, especially for a place like Sweden. As you see AI skills seeping into other industries, do you then see it still remaining one for specialist roles, or do we see it starting to apply? I mean, we've also done some work around green technology. And green technology, the kind of the intensive margin is really important, because actually we see it kind of, if you actually look at explicit green jobs, they're not nearly as fast moving as we think they're going to be. But when you look at green skills, you see them spreading far and wide, so purchasing managers and a process specialists and so on. So I think that we're still very much at that stage. The interesting thing is, because AI technology is complex and difficult to use, will we see it seeping it, or will it still be something that you have AI specialists that do, and then other people that use, but almost are just pure consumers of it, and so don't need skills in it? And that's a question to be explored in the coming years, I think. In terms of the original question, I don't know. We do have the data, and so we could actually find out. So in fact, if you ask me later, I can probably track down the data. We can have a look together. But yeah.
Yeah, we have a question.
Thank you very much. Just would like to ask more about the midterm skills. I wonder if typical job postings that you analyze contains information related on offered salary or practices or things that related on the return. I would like to know whether some skills will be more.
Yeah, we've not studied that in this paper. What you find is that the presentation of those data varies by country. So just to give you sort of an example of the range, in where I'm from in the UK, I think about 45% of job postings have a salary in them, whereas I believe Germany is much lower, sort of more around the 10% mark or something like that. So it's kind of the sort of the ability to do that does vary quite a lot by country. We've not done it here, but it is certainly possible to do. We've done quite a lot of work in other places to sort of look at those kind of questions. And certainly I think that is another sort of layer of data that we could build on here, because understanding what are the skills that really drive value in jobs is really getting a sense of which ones are the ones that are kind of have the scarcity value. So.
Yes, when you did the web, the jobs internet scratching, what type of portals you looked into? I mean, LinkedIn for jobs, job masters, or specialized websites for specialized jobs?
Yeah, so as a company, we invest heavily in trying to get as many sources as we can. So what we do is we look for the more general job sites. We also look for the sort of the specialized ones, because we know that they have an important niche role. And we also try to get the major companies if they've got their own job boards as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Duncan.
That's right.
I'm assured that we have. I'm assured that we have Professor Mario Mezzanzanica, who is sitting in the virtual waiting room. Hopefully, still sitting in the virtual waiting room, and we'll have his presentation, and then we'll move to tea and coffee break after that. Thank you, sir.
I'm here. Do you hear me? I have an echo.
Provi a parlare.
Ok. I have a big echo.
Un attimo solo che non si sente bene, c'è l'eco.
Take a break.
Ha il microfono spento.
No, no. I don't know if I can start. Can I start?
I don't think this is on, so.
Possiamo partire.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So, good morning to everyone. First of all, I'm very sorry, but not to be able to physically attend the meeting in the beautiful city of Tempio Pausania. I want to thank Marco Riccieri and Krista Larsen for allowing me to be with you, even at a distance. The title of my talk is Catching the Skill Transformation Using Big Data and AI, and Novel Changes to observe how Italian labor market has been changing through time. I want to start with some consideration. We can say the labor market is characterized by two main factors in the last year. The first one is about structural changes related to some microtrends. For example, technological innovation is reshaping jobs, going towards the realization of real digital revolution. The second is demographic factor. Worldwide, people above 65 years old are double between 1990 and 2020. Third, work mobility. 20% of the European workforce was born in a country that differs from the working one. And finally, the topic of sustainability and green skill is growing within job demand. The second key element that is characterized the labor market is about side effect, intended as indirect event, not strictly related to labor market affecting it. For example, pandemic crisis and the strong effect on the labor market. The dotted line in the picture, in the slide, shows the variation in the demand of online job vacancy comparing 2020 against 2019 in Italy, horizontal line. The filled line is the stringency index computed by Oxford to estimate the degree of contingency policies acted by government due to the lockdown. The picture shows that hard lockdown negatively affect the demand in Italy in the first 3 quarters of 2020. Then the demand started to grow, going above the level of 2019 in the last quarter. The recovery had different growth based on the local labor market dynamics and their characteristics as shown in the picture. You can see the line of different regions in Italy, in the north Lombardy, in the center Lazio, and in the south Campania. Moreover, the COVID pandemic definitively increased the need for digital interaction in many contexts. For example, the need for smart working in the labor market, remote learning in education activity, and the significant growth in e-commerce. As further element of critical, the Ukraine war is having dramatic human, social, and economic effect as well. This may have a strong effect on the labor market demand shortly. In such a scenario, the knowledge of what happened in the labor market becomes crucial to define policy timely and to support decision makers, workers, company, and labor operator in general. In particular, observing skill changes within occupation is a relevant topic to sustain an inclusive labor market, reducing the skill mismatch. In this talk, we wanted to observe the pervasiveness, digital, non-digital, and transversal skills within professional areas by looking at the skill requested in their importance. At the second contribution, we compute an indicator to estimate the impact of skill changes in 2015 and 2019 to catch novelties. To this end, we analyzed more than 3 million online job vacancies posted in Italy in 2015 and 2019. A quick slide. You can see in this slide the example of job vacancy posted on the web. I want to guide you through the methodological step needed to train a machine, understanding the vacancy through AI and big data techniques. You can see in this slide example of vacancy posted on the web, as I said before. Basically, the machine has to learn and recognize that some terms may be skilled, then that some of them are known as they appear in official taxonomy, like ESCO, and some other are new. The sum is for classifying occupation on standard taxonomy that can be new or already classified. We have been guiding the consortium of CEDEFOP and the Eurostat project that aims at collecting vacancies over Europe and to put big data analytics on labor market into official statistics, to find a way to improve their ability to observe phenomenon, thus increasing the knowledge value. Now I can show some example of analysis. The first one is the impact of skill within professional areas. To this end, we introduced the skill rate, an indicator that represents the pervasiveness of different typology of skill within a professional area as a percentage. This is a composition of a skill rate for Italy in 2020. The heterogeneity of skill demand is quite clear, evident from different professional areas. Going deeper on digital skill, we can see that digital skills are not all digital in the same way. We define a set of categories to discriminate among digital skills, from basic usage of tool down to specific technological know-how, coding skill, big data technology, and so on. Going through the use of tools to communicate or to manage ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning System. In this slide, you can see the impact of different typology of digital skill for occupation area. This allows designing the upskilling or reskilling programs on the basic on labor market needs, on the effective digital skill needs, as well as to perform a comparative gap analysis to check if and to what extent one is aligned with the labor market expectation. Once pervasiveness has been measured, is there a way to observe skills change and then how they shape occupation over time? To this end, we introduce the map of change that take into account first, the trend of vacancy, second, the new skills added in 2019 with respect to 2015, and finally, the variation of the relevance of skill that still hold in the observed here. This map shows the distribution of skill novelty of the occupation like a magic quadrant. The red area axis represents the mean values of the variation of skill novelty, x-axis, and the variation of the relevance of core set skills in the y-axis. Color represents different professional areas, whilst the size of the bubble represents the variation in the number of vacancies advertised for that area over time. We can see high variation upper right, mainly for ICT-related occupation, but at the same time, all occupations are involved in a process of skill variation. Focusing on ICT occupation, we observe that they change most in terms of new addition to the skill set and the core set. They are the occupation that in 2019 show a significant change regarding the addition of new skills, which were not present in 2015, and the relevance of common core skill set over the period. How to put all this information together into unified indicators? We designed a unified indicator in percentage, including the indicators seen before together. That is the novelty and skill variation. The index shows that change is more evident among the high-skill profession, followed by medium and low skills. In the slide, you can see the most important variation. In the blue color is represented the ICT occupation, like data specialist, cloud computing, or robotics. But at the same time, we can see the high level of variation on brand manager, of insurance clerk, of biomedical engineer. The index shows in this slide that change is more evident among the high-skill professions, followed by medium and low skill. We can see the variation for low group, restaurant manager, venue director, mechanical engineer, production engineer, or upper medium group, mobile, project manager, developer, technical sales representative. They have a medium level of variation, but it's very important for, I think that you can see that a variation is very important for all occupation, skill variation, of course. Novelty index show that the change in terms of skill and relevance is driven mainly by digitalization and the great importance of transversal or soft or non-cognitive skill. The change is significant in areas where digitalization and transversal skill have a key role, such as ICT, family, research and development, and delivery of services. Jobs with high-level skills show a significant change index, even if all the professional figures are affected by changes as well. To conclude, skill analyticals through big data and AI and techniques can effectively improve knowledge on labor market and trends to support decision-making for different stakeholders. From this kind of data, it's possible to go more in depth and some changing factor of labor market. For example, in our research activity, we are now working on identifying novel occupation and skill, estimate the stability and coverage of online job vacancy, study indicators to estimate the impact of green skill and green economy within occupation, as well as to estimate the relevance of digital, non-digital, soft skill within jobs and among sector, territory, and so on. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mario. That was really great. Are there any questions that people would like to pose to Mario following the presentation? Any questions from the floor?
So all is clear.
We have a question from Martin.
Marco. If you have some, Mario, if you have some example of...
Marco, I don't hear well you. I don't know why, but there is a...
Provi a spegnere il suo microfono.
If you know some example of public service or public agencies that are going concretely in this direction.
Sorry, Marco, but I don't hear you. If you can go to the...
No. Allora, try.
Oh, thank you.
If you know some concrete example of public service or public agency that are going to use and to apply the system you describe.
Oh, okay. We discuss a lot with CEDEFOP and Eurostat from this point of view because we think that now the data set of vacancy in Europe is very important. And Eurostat in this moment and CEDEFOP can give the possibility of the researcher and public services to have access of this kind of data set. They have to ask to them the possibility to use it. Of course, some public services are using it also in Italy, some of them, and or in different countries. I know also in Spain, and this could be a very interesting approach for the future. So I think they started, but it's very important to going on most rapidly to better understand the knowledge that is possible to have from this kind of data, because they can help policymaker and public services to do and to create personalized services. And I think that this is very important for the labor market, today's labor market.
Matteo, did you have a question? Would you like to come and ask it better?
Buongiorno Mario, Matteo Sgarzi, Selec.
Buongiorno.
I have a question, a suggestion. I don't know. There is something in your presentation that struck me a little bit when you talked about the level of variation in terms of competence between low skilled and high skilled. So if I well understood your data, so you said that the rate of variation if low skilled jobs are less than in high skilled jobs. So I'm wondering to myself that this is a kind of, it's interesting because some years ago when we talking about the risk of exclusion of low skilled people from the labor market induced by digital competence, by raising digital competence, our concern was that the people that with low skilled, less equipped are most in danger on the labor market. But you show that that the level of variancy of skills for low skilled jobs are not so important. So maybe can we say that this risk of exclusion is quite limited, or I'm just extrapolating a little bit from your data?
Oh, thank you, Matteo. I think that we are now observing that high-level occupation as most involved in changing skills. And I think that this is because the driver of the changes is digital skills, new digital skills that are most requested in new occupation of the high-level ICT new occupation like data scientist, data specialist, cloud computing. That are occupation that born really in 2015, not too much years ago. And so the skill for this occupation are very important, but at the same time, digital skills are very important for high-level occupation. This is the observation that we have in our data. At the same time, we say that, and I consider that, if the changes in high-level occupation is more than 50%, it's very important also for low-level occupation because 12, 20%, 25% of changes, I think that is very important in 5 years observed. So my consideration is that all the occupation are involved in changes, skill, in different level, of course, but in few years, because 5 years are few years, the changes is very high for all occupation, because I consider that also 12 or 20% in 5 years for low-level occupation is very important. So this can have effect, I hope, in policy for vocational educational training, for new learning activity for all people, and so on.
Thank you, Mario. I think we have time for one more question, if there is a question. No? Okay. Well, thank you, Mario.
Thank you for you. And bye-bye to all of you. Have a good work.
Thank you very much. I think some real food for thought there on the fact that all occupations are changing. The speed of change is far greater in higher skilled occupations, in higher skilled roles, but we also have the potential for change across the entire workforce. And I would be interested myself in changes in the intermediate levels, because if we're worried about the hollowing out of the labour market, then seeing that lower skilled roles change quite slowly is not really a surprise. Seeing innovation at the higher ends, the better paid part, I'm curious if we're seeing changes in the intermediate part of the labour market, or whether or not a lack of change is indicative that those roles are slowly disappearing. But no, we have time for that. Can we now introduce Alessandro Webb? Dr. Webb has been with us now in the network for a good few years, and used to be based at the University of Sardinia with Professor McQuaid, who is well known to us. And Alexander is now at the University of the West of Scotland, which is just outside Glasgow. And will be talking to us about some research she's doing with the arts and culture sector.
Adjustment of the microphone, very important. So let's do the logistics so that I can concentrate on it. Welcome everyone. Thank you very much to EURISPES and IWAK for giving me this central stage today. And I feel really privileged and so excited to be here, finally in person. So hello everyone. Yes, there we go. That should be okay now. So today, as Andy introduced me, we see that I come from the university and the School of Business and Creative Industries. So you can definitely expect that creative and focus, I think, is appropriate. And I guess today what I would like to kind of pre-warn you that I'm not going to present statistics and research that is done, because this is very much an evolving field, but I think it's very precious and very important to also have a wide range of focus, and creative industries and arts and culture are perhaps those industries that are not necessarily in our focus when thinking about AI and data, because we know that businesses kind of captivated that idea and applied, and we've got great examples of those innovations. I should say not only businesses, because obviously the public sectors and the whole idea of driving social policy through the data and evidence-based policy is equally important. But I think that we're now used to that idea that businesses know that there is a value in pursuing this side of inquiry. But I don't think that that idea of more efficient operations and the kind of a better decision-making is kind of applied and even thought about much in art sectors. And I think this is my task for today, to kind of open your eyes to this slightly different sector that we kind of take for granted. So the idea of the key question would be, is this a value to kind of talk about artificial intelligence, big data? And of course, we cannot talk about that without wider focus on digitalization. So is this relevant to those sectors, and for what reasons? And I think that because we don't have data yet, it's about kind of a speculation and kind of thinking about what would be those pockets of applications in this specific sector. So my idea is to provide you a little bit of a context and give you the kind of a key pockets of applications that are deriving mostly from what sector in Scotland and UK talks about. So very much driven on a more qualitative approach to actually get a little bit of an insight. At some point, if you feel I'm completely losing you, do let me know. Start yawning very much, but I think that because I'm an academic and academics are always accused of kind of dreaming and thinking into the future, I think it's quite appropriate. So I'll try not to lose you. In terms of the context, what we've known, and this is very kind of a tiny and feels like a lovely extension, because last year online, but I was talking about the impact of COVID on the sectors. And we know there's lots of statistics about how decimated they were by impact of the pandemic. And I think that there would be obviously a difference in the whole area of creative sectors, because there will be different subsectors that are included in that. We tend to think about arts and culture, but actually they are not very synonymous industries. They are very much wide-ranging, so we can talk about craft as much as the performance and music. We can talk about more creative side of the sectors as well, like going into much kind of ICT and technology ideas. We can talk about architecture, so they're very, very different. But I think the key sufferers were definitely the professions and creative professions that were working in so-called live events, so your performance. We know that we couldn't participate in live events, we couldn't attend theaters, so this sector definitely suffered a lot. And to the extent that a lot of people had to, we had a lovely conversations yesterday from colleagues who work in a kind of client-facing situation or overview employment sites, how many artists, actors, musicians, highly trained, were queuing to get any job in delivery, in anything that you could do. So that was definitely the key impact. But also the important thing is that this whole situation opened the eyes of creative sector people working in it, how important digitalization is. And so this is kind of a nice consequence, if you wish, of kind of realizing, yes, this is important, because if we take that sort of a high crisis situation like COVID into account, then we can communicate, we can stage, we can invite people into theaters, museums, and so on. And therefore, what is the option for us? So in that moment of crisis, they recognize that digitalization is key. And obviously there were attempts to actually replace some of the face-to-face interactions, like we all try to do it and engage with the technology and apply it into the context of work. But with huge challenges, may I say, because when we're thinking about performance arts that are predominantly trained, people in the sector are trained to be on stage, to interact in a specific way in a dedicated venues. If you take that situation away from what they've known and suddenly they're asked to create digital content, that is a key issue, and that showcased how far behind, if you wish, they are behind any other sector. So because of all of that, the current situation in the sector in terms of the policy and a strategy for recovery is very much engaging directly and very explicitly with this digital. And obviously the Arts Council, very much involved in England and in Scotland, they're very much linking that digital agenda also with social and green recovery. So it's almost like it's gaining impetus also because of this added value of where, or if you wish, how you could sell the idea of importance of digitalization in this sector. And the appetite is really growing, but there's also this really interesting moment where the sector is really keen to move beyond the basics. Like you probably, maybe some of you partook in events through Zoom or kind of a basic technology, or a lot of kind of streaming events that we also use in the kind of ways that we communicate through different networks. That is considered now as a kind of old and very static technology. So the appetite is kind of thinking, so what's next? Where can we develop the skills and how would that look like? And the sector really kind of also looks at the ways of gathering lessons, inspirations more from commercial sectors. And especially in this room, I do not need to highlight that because it's obvious that the benefits that we know of applying just digital innovations into work and production really is about that idea of saving time, saving costs. And that idea of saving costs is especially important in those sectors that tend to be underfunded, minimal kind of capital, if you wish, but actually a lot of creativity. The ideas that come from the commercial businesses are mostly about how we can use the technology so we produce safer, more efficient, without perhaps human errors, and how we can actually increase productivity and competitiveness. So some of these inspirations and kind of, we know that the key, and Duncan was also saying about that, Krista was referring to the changes and showcasing the sectors that are really leading and already key in kind of using AI, not just discovering effects of it, are across different sectors of production, in banking, finance, insurance, and also transportations, logistics. Lots of stuff around consumer technologies and electronics. All of that is well documented. The key idea is that those technologies tend to be used, as on this graph, mostly as a kind of trying to make sense of what's out there, trying to produce more efficiently, trying to use a lot of data behind for marketing and kind of targeting clients. And also, I think increasingly companies now recognize that operating in a digital world also means dangers. So how can you use AI and big data to actually create more secure space for both customers and companies? So as we think about that, obviously not all of those key messages and kind of key benefits of using technology would apply to sectors that are not about producing mass, but actually quite more distinctive content. And so as the governments follow on this agenda of trying to introduce the digital for greater benefits, also for sustainability, for greener production, the key underlying thing is that still the growth, the economic growth is important. And creative sectors in the UK have been very important. And so they are not just a pretty thing that just sit out there, but they do deliver on productivity. And so in the last decade or two even, we see continuous progress. So despite the impact of pandemic, we know that there is always year-on-year growth. So just in 2019, between 2018 and 19, there was growth by over 5% in GDA, so gross value added. Then over the decade from 2011, the industries grew by nearly 50%. And the prediction is that they will be growing, specifically in economies like Scotland, that is becoming less about the production, but kind of more about services, tourism, and so on. So the value of looking into this whole digital innovations technology has some remits as well. And the key idea would be, how do you implement that into cultural production and consumption? And the key messages that are coming across is really that there can be different pockets of application, and there will be to do with creation of digital work, the digital content, but artistic content, and also predominantly about focusing on audiences, really in the same wave of spirit as we do when we thinking about consumers in other sectors. So this is kind of a new theme, and the value that is attributed to sectors that which manage the whole production is something that will be of a different sense and value than just creating film or music or dance. So in other words, we can concentrate on the creative content and application in that sphere, and also looking into more kind of a business application and business model for cultural production. So increasingly we see that shift from just creating cultural offer to creating digital cultural offer. And the sectors are very clear and specific about the fact that that doesn't mean that they want to stop making real art on stage for people, but it's about trying to monetize on a possible future revenue streams or streams that are already in there that comes directly from creating work for digital audiences. And I think again, the pandemic was really exceptional times for people who are working in this sector and really pretty much experimenting. You know that in your countries as well, there will be national companies, ballet, dance, etc. And those will be bigger institutions that tend to have more money, and therefore they can experiment with more expensive technology. So there was a lot of during pandemic cases, but scattered, how the new technology, things like augmented reality, mixed reality, and kind of very high-end, sophisticated, and expensive thing was used to create a really interesting content for people to engage with. Very differently, not in theaters, but let's say at homes, with VR sets or without VR sets, but in that very new way of consuming and enjoying culture. So that was one end. On the other side, there was a lot of experimentation by individual artists who would be looking into a very basic technology, even using Zoom for staging. So this disparity also showcases possible pockets of what kind of skills and the level of skills you need to really lift up that idea of selling digital content for real monetized value that can contribute to the development of the sectors. So this is that idea of what the sectors want to do now beyond the mainstreaming or streaming of the content, and actually looking into specific AI or machine learning application so they actually can use it in their production. And the key areas are as such, and I should say that actually a lot of developments in this realm is being driven in the UK by Alan Turing Institute. This is an institute dedicated for data science and AI. So this year, themes was actually quite very much heavy on this side of what can we expect and what can we do. And so there are 4 areas of application, if you wish. I kind of listed here on a slide, and again, they will be to do with artistic and creative process. So there's now a lot of talk and experimentation, how AI can be actually used in the creative process, either to support the creation or enhance or stimulate it, or kind of even replicate the creativity. So the idea here for the artists is that they want to use this technology to push forward the field. And we know how important for any field of any human activities is to propel forward and innovate so you can become and stay relevant to what people want. So they're looking into that very particular applications, and we saw examples of experimentation with music. So the AI and algorithms are now used to recreate the mood or to continue the process. And again, they can be either part of the process of making or an inspiration. So they can, artists can create with algorithms, or algorithm takes over after a piece is created. So the application to music was there. There were applications in dance where kind of interesting things were emerging from linking on-stage dancers and robots, and how that kind of idea would forward the field, if you wish. Lots of stuff about kind of cross-pollination that, between sort of algorithmic way of engaging with dance, but at the same time producing very much personalized, for example, prosthetics for disabled dancers. Lots of magnificent examples, but those will be tiny, minute things to do with exploration and innovation, and very expensive at this stage. There's also a critical ethical question emerging, and already unions, for example, really highlight the idea that if we allow that to happen, then we need to also consider the consequences of, especially in a digital world, who would own the music, how artists would be protected, what would be the owner or author, or in holding that intellectual property or artistic property. So this is kind of the high end. Then we move into potentially the area, I call it here arts and cultural heritage, but this is probably the area that is leading the AI kind of big data contributions, because this would be the area where I would position mostly the museums, the archives, the kind of archaeological stuff, because they tend to have access to enormous amount of data. Especially, we saw that even before the pandemic, museums were very, very keen on embracing that. And actually, they were the strongest in the pandemic because they already had an intelligence of how can you actually use some of the archive that is digital and create digital tours. They also know how to process a vast amount of information to, let's say, almost like have an extension of exhibition online, or to personalize the experience of users per language, per interest, and so on. But still, a lot of application could be done here if the sector wants to, or professionalize, really wants to investigate and interpret, preserve, and manage huge amount of data in terms of archive beyond the singular institution. So then you can create kind of a meta-knowledge that is worldwide, because you can also see where the pockets of need are. And interesting for professionals working in museums, libraries, and so on, they are very excited about that, because they think that they can actually advance archiving practice through that very much vast data processing power. And in that way, they can actually pick up on themes that are very relevant, very dispersed amongst the cultures, and they can bring a lot of inclusion and sensitive topics into a wide attention of people through sharing. The middle one, again, will be probably the most aligned with the kind of areas of business and how others use the big data for decision making. And this is key because cultural industries need to survive like any other industry. They tend to rely fundamentally on public funding as well, or a mix of public funding and personal or like company-generated funding through different pursuits. But here, the key thing is to, in the process of staying relevant and applying or selling the cultural products to people, is about understanding the audiences. And audiences changed, and we have this theme ongoing that change is part of our lives, and therefore we need to stay focused. And the sector really encourages now for artists, when they produce cultural products, to think about it as an opportunity, because they're not limited by audience that comes through the door. They can actually be open and sell the theater tickets to someone who is in a completely different part of the world, because they are not limited to geography. And there is a big talk about that idea of digital audiences and how much they can actually help the sector to rejuvenate and survive into the future. And of course, part of the cultural practices and kind of importance of this sector is, especially when you're applying for public funding, and we know that very much from kind of research side of our work as well, that you need to evidence impact. And that evidence of impact seems to be crucial and connected with the idea of the sector survival, because in order to get the money, you will need to demonstrate that you're making a change in people's lives. Now having the access to social media, different way of discussions and so on, artists and organizations can gather that information. But how much easier would that be if they've got the systems that can actually gather that data for them and help them analyze and make cases so they can make better decisions, but they can also encourage funders or donors to invest or give money. And the key here will be about all of that data and all of that information, is so they can actually create a better, more personalized product, in the same way as that idea of personalization happens in sectors that are more commercial. Underneath all of this will be also an important part of driving cultural policy and arts policy. And this is kind of maybe the least kind of a pursued way of inquiry just now, but again, in order to represent the sectors, in order to make decision-making at the level of the sector, and that will include training, the skills development for the sector, the new skills required by artists and people who work as a creative professional in the sector, will be very much driven by people working in the cultural policy and driving that agenda. So lots of really important issues here, and I guess we need to really think about the possible future aspects of that development. And I said at the beginning that this is a sector of growth, but over the time, it's interesting because we've observed that idea of different discourses. So we all seen how we talked about services, and we still do, we moved, from knowledge to kind of creative economy. I guess the new extension, what's really important in the sector, not just cultural and creative, beyond, but is that idea of immersion. So that idea of personalized content, immersive content, interactive content is all, in other words, how can you captivate the audiences? How can you make them stay? How can you make people to buy something of cultural value? And I think that gaming industry, the games, yes, we're very much about that. So it's about that developing story and captivating audiences. Film is very good in that. So now other sectors are coming through that idea of immersion. But then I want to say that on purpose, that immersion would be very different than automation. So it was really interesting, Duncan was saying about the change of, even in the sectors or countries that are predominantly manufacturing focused, right? We see the change. That is not necessarily that kind of automated robotic replication. It's about that idea of personalized, different. Obviously, scale will be different. We're not talking, therefore, for application for everyone. If it's supposed to be really targeted at specific profiles of audiences, the same way as we have specific profiles of job seekers or skill sets. So I think that is quite an interesting kind of dynamic, and will be interesting to see where that goes. So on one side, I think at this point, even if it's very early and we're talking about really slow steps, I think in this moment in time, it's really important to look into the future and start thinking about those sectors as also important players, because the implication will be on the workforce. And so when I did my research and tried to look into jobs advertisements in the creative sector, there's a specific platform run by the agency in Scotland. It's called Creative Scotland. The same will be in England, Arts Council. When I did the research about what digital skills are needed, I was like excited. This is the time when we actually seek specific, explicit demand. One job, and it was in museums and was to do with archives. So makes sense. Is a person who was sought for introducing or setting a foundation for systems to actually make sense of vast data that is there. No other jobs. So it's on that side, there is this appetite, there's this idea of thinking, yes, this is really important for making sure that the sector survives and is prepared for future similar or different events like pandemic or whatever. Yet at the same time, there is a little bit of a like a misfortune, almost like no one is looking for specialists yet. Yet the part of the research that I did on the supply of skills, and may I say that when we think about creative industries in the UK, those tend to be highly educated, mostly graduate people. So people graduating from performance, film, music. There is very difficult to get into this jobs in creative sector if you don't have higher education degree. So that is how it is. It's you can't learn that job on the skill on the job. So we've got highly educated people in the sector. They're going mostly through the education. And I think this is where we see at the moment a change in terms of the offering of educational offering. So universities are leading the world, and especially in England, in terms of introducing new qualification programs. So when you map the programs, you see digital performance, digital media and communication, digital this and that. So there is already, they are changing the programs, introducing the skill sets that are coming from the side of digitalization and AI. So the future will be, in probably 2, 3, 4 years time, that we'll have a ready supply, if you wish, of artists, creative professionals that can actually supply a good workforce there and make change. But at the moment, there's a mismatch between the demand, people say, just from jobs offering and what's in the pipeline. So in all of that, I would say that the mapping of the provisions creating some sort of escalators, and Andrew knows everything about escalators, will be very important to get sense of where we are, what needs to be done, what skills need to be addressed now, so in the future the sector can take advantages of the opportunities. And again, like with all of these agendas of skills, the financial investment will be the key. So inviting the partners and obviously the national partners and politicians to actually get that will be hugely important. So to remain kind of active in this game. So kind of concluding, the assessment of benefits needs to follow. Then we need to kind of monitor the needs for skills and developments. There will be gaps, obviously just now and into the future, because we're navigating this really kind of an intricate space. But already there are innovation and initiatives that are showing us that this is the pathway. So the idea would be, let's do not miss out the opportunity and be prepared. I think the preparedness is the key in that. But the other important thing is that kind of, I think Lucas was asking this question about how will that change the profile of people who work. You know, obviously now, if artists will be also quite skilled in digital agenda, it's going to be very important how, in terms of what kind of jobs they can get and what kind of jobs they can create for themselves. 80% of people who work in the sectors are freelancers, and that's a challenge because trying to introduce any kind of initiatives, skills initiatives in a kind of dispersed community like that, it's really, really challenging. But at the same time, there will be lessons for the wider economy that is becoming a little bit like that, with fractured labor market, with 24 hours idea of working in various different industries. So perhaps there is a possibility for building a network and really feeding into each other's agenda, so this can be pushed forward. So the questions related to all of that, obviously, in terms of the labor, will be also about how we monitor artificial intelligence impact on the sector, how would we collect data, and specifically in this sector, there is very little in terms of observation, kind of observatory style of rhetoric, and I think that is a pity. But maybe this is a gap for, definitely I'm up for the challenge, but maybe also you in your countries and regions as well. The other thing about the digital transformation, again, investment in talent, because that seems to be the most important thing, digital skills for development. And also in terms of opportunities for employment and learning in order to create innovation technology that can help those sectors to survive. And I think there's a lot to do here. Agenda is quite heavy, but I guess the learning would be, in a pandemic, we kind of learned that we're behind, or the sectors are behind. So maybe that huge and tough lessons is now the way to move forward. And the aspiration is great, because when you look through the strategic documentation and kind of a discourse, especially in the UK, there is that aspiration to do the create tech the same way as we did education tech and finance tech. So there is definitely, I would say, this is the place to watch. So don't look at the arts and creatives, oh, are they important? I think that they can be a partner in that shift to post-industrial economies, creating more content, creative content for people to engage with.
Thank you, Alexandra. Do we have any questions? I mean, in some ways, we've all got the same problem, because the challenge is, no matter how much we research our specialist area, so what? You know, so how do we change practice? How do we make people provide different training? How do we make policymakers understand that the world around them is changing? So it's all about transforming intelligence through intelligence into new practices. And our network is unusual that it mixes researchers with observatory people who whose job that is kind of on a daily basis is to try and influence regional policy and regional practice. So I think we're the right kind of network for this kind of presentation. I did have one question which is really along those lines, and that is that in the UK, we're a very liberalised country. We have very little control over what training providers provide. So they can provide more or less what they want. So I'm curious, Alexandra, as to where do you take this learning? Where do you take this knowledge to? And how do you encourage that change in behaviour?
I think predominantly is about in kind of building bridges between what's currently happening in the higher education sector and kind of a work-based training, because a lot of the artists, workers, creative people who already are in the sector, obviously, they went through the old system, so they're learning on the job. And I think it's important to create a sort of a kind of like back to that idea of Helix partnership, when we actually have education and we have a industry, and the specific sector would be, you know, the example of an industry partner. We've also people deliver training as a private providers, but also unions, very important players. A very hard sector to unionize again because of the freelance aspect of it. But again, it's about trying to find opportunities that those people are in the same room, so they can kind of complement the activities. Because it's again, it's not about preferring one pathway or the other. It's about how do we actually ensure that you can arrive to the place of having skilled, competent workforce that have skill sets that are very much about arts, but also, so you've got this toolkit of art skills in your respective genre, but also at the same time you have the digital skills, the technical skills, and obviously not everyone needs the same kind of skills. So if you're a performer, you're not necessarily needing a very much technical skills of knowing how to program, but perhaps if you are a choreographer or director, maybe if you want to make that kind of a proposition, you need those skills. So does it mean that you have to go back to the higher education? Perhaps not, but what are the other options? So again, this, of course, is nice to talk about the money is the thing, isn't it? It's who then funds it and where we can find the collaboration. But again, I think the other opportunity for the sector is that they have, and it's a very arbitrary classification, but creative industries has so many different pockets of it. But part of UK classification, at least, the IT, communication, graphic design, that's all there. So there's a huge potential for the sector itself to share the knowledge. And I think that's so far a missed opportunity, and maybe that's where we can go. I mean, where is the better place to train? I mean, and exchange knowledge and training aspirations than from people who are your subsector. So it's the closest bridge.
One good example was service sector. So we have other areas of the service sector where we have private consumers, and they are hit very much, like tourism sector, restaurants, hotels, etc. So you brought in here the concept of immersion, which is very interesting because this might be inspiring. We have ideas how we can lead our discussion to these sectors like tourism or hotel sector, etc. Because there we have also no lobby. Most of the time, they are not in the focus of politics. So how can we go further in that field?
That's interesting, and I guess that similar problems were experienced by the whole service economy, and with that the impact of the pandemic. It's a tough one because even it takes a while to shift your brain when you think about the culture and gets it out of the theater. I don't know, we're taking now lectures out of the theaters as well. We're taking experiences out of the physical space. But that's not to say that, you know, that we can or we shouldn't preserve the kind of face-to-face interactions. I guess it's about giving people, customers or audiences, students, and anybody, to give them an opportunity to have a different sets of experiences, and they might choose this or the other. And obviously, when we're talking about tourism, the whole idea is of being in a place. So it's not like we're going to eradicate that idea, you know, do not go that way. But I think that there still can be almost a parallel world. Like in ours, the other big thing I didn't mention is that idea of metaverse. You know, moving, and actually that was a very important point that I forgot to make, that metaverse as a different stage, you know, that you go out there, you've got your sets, and you actually immerse in that, and that digital becomes the place where you are. Like with everything, I think the hybrid place is the most difficult to achieve. But I guess what for commercial organization, I guess what it is that they can start substituting, I think will be perhaps a parallel process as we experience in e-commerce, because initially we were still kind of buying the stuff there and we were kind of going that direction. And now, of course, some people choose to only buy online and some do both. And so there are variations. I think this is what we need to keep in mind, that we will not have one model for everyone, but we can actually learn and kind of think about commercial with this idea of understanding who is this for. And this is where it translates to this idea of different business models. So you would not think about theater in the same way as Netflix, right? We've experienced that, especially during the pandemic, that people were using those streaming services, and that was a place of entertainment for a lot of people. Now, dance sector, ballet people are talking about, can we not have something like that, Netflix for dance? So is that idea of commercializing from a completely different ways of interacting without undermining that actually the physical stage and going every so often is as important.
If you have any more questions for Alessandra, she will be here over lunch. Please do ask her. It's present time. 1 second. We've got just 2 short films. The first one is from Jenny Kipper, who's our coordinator. Jenny can't be with us because she's heavily pregnant. So we have Jenny first, and then we have one from Alessandro Zeda.
Hi together, dear Marco, dear EURISPES team, dear network members, participants of our conference. I just want to send over greetings from sunny Frankfurt. Some of you know me since many, many years from the beginning of our network activities. And some of you just know me since a few years when I came back as network manager. And some of you had a lot of exchange.
I just want to send over greetings
The
from sunny
EURISPES team,
Frankfurt.
dear
Some of
network
you
members,
know me
participants of
since
our
many, many years
conference.
from the beginning of our
I
network
just want to send over
activities. And some
greetings
of you
from
just know
sunny
me since a few
Frankfurt.
years when I came
Some
back
of
as a
you
network
know me
manager.
since many,
And
many
some of
years
you
from
had
the
a lot of
beginning of our
exchange
network
with me via
activities.
email or phone
And some of you
calls
just
during
know
the
me since
last
a
weeks
few
or
years when I
days.
came back as network.
And that's why I wanted to send the
Had a
greetings
lot
from
of
sunny Frankfurt.
exchange with me via email or phone calls during the last weeks or days. And that's why I wanted to send you greetings from sunny Frankfurt via video and wish you some interesting days together full of exchange, inspiring presentations and nice conversations. Because this is what our conference stands for. Unfortunately, I cannot join you in person as we are waiting for a new family member to come and she doesn't allow me to travel anymore. It's so sad, but we had to decide it this way a few days before. So, but for sure my colleagues will support you and your request and the conference in the best way they can. And we have a great team that has managed the conference for this year, or is managing the conference for this year. And hopefully we're going to see each other again next year at the next annual meeting. So thanks, Ida. Thanks, Jana. Thanks, Gianluca, for supporting everything. And yeah, the program is very tough. And so you're going to have exciting days together with a lot of input, a lot of exchange, and I'm sure you're going to have a wonderful conference. Wonderful days and an excellent, really excellent evening program. Thanks to our host. Thanks, Marco. You did so much that you had such great ideas for the evening. So enjoy your time together, and hopefully we're going to see each other again next year in person. Thanks, Marco, again for hosting and making possible all this, making possible. And yeah, you're going to spend some wonderful time together. Have a great conference. See you. Bye-bye.
chosen by the formula of the focus on the green transition and the digital transition, but especially the importance of networks and what is highlighted in the world system. In fact, information systems are becoming more and more a way of connecting our policies, including those of labor and in particular those of employment, training, and education. Alongside technological innovation, but especially the new techniques of reconciling information systems that are basically just statistics that we all know, that we are obviously the world sovereignty of the world ecosystem. Today, at that great strength, the great system that allows us an interconnection with the rest of the world. And then face what concerns the new computational training that must be set with the market. But above all that, try to bridge that gap between labor demand and supply, and especially the qualification and certification skills. Skills of the past that must become the starting point for the development of innovative skills, technological skills, and those of cybersecurity. Here, the region of Sardinia will invest in the financial profile through the filter of the European Social Fund rather than the national funds. But in particular, the new tools that the region through the World Fund in Sardinia wanted to make available to our unemployed businesses and all workers in the labor market in general. To this profile, we want to add an important reconnaissance that concerns society. It's a tradition that must come together with green, digital energy, a starting point to open the institution to society, to families, and to all the unemployed. It is a compelling challenge, but the time has come to overcome obstacles and limitation and open the barriers to a new frontier of employment and progress and work to work toward.
Right, thank you everybody. It is now time for lunch. So if you could all be back here for 2 o'clock, and then we'll move into our workshop groups for this afternoon. So have a lovely lunch, try to get a little bit of sunshine, and we'll see everybody back here at 2 o'clock. Thank you all very much.